flip Facebook Live.
And looks like it's there.
All right. Great. Well, welcome everyone. This is the Friday, April 1st meeting of the Thurston Regional Planning Council. I'm going to call the meeting to order and we'll start with introductions. And I think what makes the most sense is I'll go down through the name of organizations. And if you are here representing that organization, as the primary member or the alternate, please introduce yourself. And also for those of you who popped in after I suggested this earlier, if you can rename yourself or change your name and include the organization you're representing, I think that's helpful for folks as there's some new faces. So first we'll go with City of Olympia.
Good morning, Clark Gilman.
Hi, Clark. How about City of Lacey? Okay, we'll come back and see if there's anyone else. Tumwater.
Good morning, Eileen Swarthout, City of Tumwater.
Hi, Eileen. Thurston County.
Gary Edwards.
Hi, Gary.
Good morning. Good morning.
How about City of Rainier?
Dennis is joining just now.
Oh, okay. We'll pause and let Dennis say hi. All right, City of Rainier. Dennis, are you with us?
He was on mute.
Oh, Dennis, you were on mute. Can you introduce yourself?
Good morning.
Good morning, Dennis. How about City of Tenino?
The great city of Tenino, John O'Callahan.
Sorry, the great city of Tenino. You're right. I'll make a note, John.
Thanks.
How about Yelm? Okay. And what about Bucota? Anyone here from Bucota today? And how about Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis Reservation? Nisqually Indian Tribe?
Hello, Dave Isle, Nisqually Tribe.
Hi, David.
Hello.
North Thurston Public Schools.
Gretchen Maliska.
Hey, Gretchen. And Tumwater School District.
Mel Murray, Tumwater School District.
Hi, Mel. Good morning. And I'm Hillary Seidel. I'm here representing the Olympia School District. What about Inner City Transit?
Debbie Sullivan, representing Inner City Transit.
Hi, Debbie. Clean Water Alliance.
Hi, Carolyn Cox, representing Lot.
Hi, Carolyn. Port of Olympia.
Hi, I'm Amy Evans on behalf of Bob IL. Nice to see you.
Hi, Amy. How about the PUD of Thurston County? Okay, we'll come back to them. And Thurston Conservation District. Lacey Fire District. I know I saw Rick.
Hello, Rick Kelling from Lacey Fire.
Hi, Rick. Puget Sound Regional Council. The Evergreen State College.
Morgan, Evergreen.
Good morning, Scott. How about Thurston EDC?
Morning, Michael Cade.
Hi, Michael. And Timberland Regional Library. Okay, so I know I saw City of Lacey enter.
So did Yelm.
And City of Yelm too, Chair.
Yes. So Robin and Meredith Pinto, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Robin Vasquez. Use she, her pronouns. I'm here for Lacey.
Hi, Robin.
Joe DePeno, City of Yelm.
Hey, Joe. Did I miss anybody else who entered? I saw lots of alerts of people in the waiting room, but I'm not sure if there's anybody else, council members. Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. It's nice to know who's in the room. That brings us to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
John O'Callahan, move approval.
Edwards, second.
Great, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any against? All right, the agenda is approved. That brings us to the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved, John O'Callahan.
Edwards, second.
Great, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the consent calendar, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, the consent calendar is approved. And I have been notified that there is no one signed up for public comment this morning. So that is going to bring us into the main body of our agenda. And I have a special script to read for this part. As stated on the agenda, agenda item number 6 is an executive session. The purpose of this executive session is to discuss a personnel item, executive director's 5-year evaluation. No decisions will be made in executive session. It will serve only as an opportunity for council members to have discussion and ask questions. The council will reconvene at approximately 9 a.m. to continue with the published agenda. The council will now adjourn to executive session. Audience participants will be placed in a virtual waiting room.
Dorinda, should that be 9 o'clock?
Our council would like an additional 5 minutes for the executive session. So if someone could update the message to say 9:05 and push me back into the breakout room, that would be wonderful.
So we need you to go ahead and reconvene the meeting, have Hillary reconvene the meeting, and then
Okay.
ask for additional time. So
Great. Do you push me back into the breakout room then?
let's take a look here. Yeah, we'll get
I
you
can
out.
actually join it from right here. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So does that mean you have to admit everyone from the waiting room back to this meeting and then send them back to the waiting room?
Yes. Or at least the chair. Is that correct, Mark?
I don't know the full answer to that. I would think it would only need to be the chair, but that might be one to put on our list and make sure we ask the auditor's office during our
Yeah.
audit this year.
Yeah. Is Vina around?
I don't know right this second, and I'm not.
She should
Yeah.
probably be. Because we'll I have am- to. I am here. It's never come up before. I'm having some really weird feedback on my audio.
The good news is I think you might be the only one, Vina.
Looks like they're all coming back in. So yeah, she'll have to reread the script again. So
Hello, do I need to reread the script and
yes,
come
you
back
do.
at, so if I say we're gonna come back at like 9:05, is that okay?
Yep, absolutely. Just go ahead and read the script word for word again. Sorry about that.
It
And
is.
then state the new time, and then you'll go back into the waiting room.
And I would probably make it 10 minutes and not.
Yeah, I
5
was just gonna ask, do we want to say 10 minutes at this point? Okay, great. So I am reconvening the meeting, and Berlene, I hope I'm saying this properly. We are going to go back into executive session. Do I have to read the whole script?
You
again?
have to start from the beginning and read it again. So
Okay.
if you can go ahead and say you're reconvening the meeting and state the time.
Yes, I am reconvening the meeting at 9 o'clock. As stated on the agenda item number 6 is an executive session. The purpose of this executive session is to discuss a personnel item, executive director's 5-year evaluation. No decision will be made in executive session. It will serve only as an opportunity for council members to have discussion and ask questions. The council will reconvene at approximately 9:10 a.m. to continue with the published agenda. The council will now adjourn to executive session. Audience participants will be placed in a virtual waiting room.
So there's a breakout rooms button at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, it will allow you back out into the breakout room.
Which meeting or what
You're
breakout room? are we-
doing room number 1. It's
Okay.
the only one, the only option.
I'm not seeing this breakout room.
Yeah, neither am I.
Me neither.
Berlina,
Let's see here. So when you hover over the bottom of your screen, do you see anything that says breakout room?
So right now, Joe is not assigned. And neither, Not seeing Rick's name here. Rick, you should be able to get in. There should be a button.
I think he just went in.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have to go in the executive meeting here. I'm good with what was said. I can just hang out. I'm ready to vote. David, you should have an option because you were assigned to room 1.
I'm not seeing anything. There's a leave button, but that's to leave the meeting.
Oh, I'm not sure what's going on. We have you in there.
Oh, maybe, here we go. Maybe this one. Here we go.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jessica. I just have a message that says I need to be assigned to a breakout room.
Jessica, what's your last name?
It's Gould, Gould.
Oh, okay. You are actually fine hanging out with us.
Perfect. Just making sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, welcome. I will now reconvene the April 1st, 2022 meeting of the Thurston Regional Planning Council. The time is 9:10. We will now move on to agenda item number 7, and I'm going to move all of my papers here so that I can get to that agenda item. And I will entertain a motion to approve the evaluation subcommittee recommendation for Executive Director Daly's evaluation and approve a one-time merit pay bonus of 4% of the Executive Director's base salary.
This is Carolyn. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the evaluation subcommittee's recommendation for Executive Director Daly's evaluation and approve a one-time merit pay bonus of 4% of the Executive Director's base salary. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
I'm
opposed?
sorry, I missed who said second.
Oh, I think it was Robin.
Yes,
Okay,
apologies.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, the motion carries, and congratulations to Executive Director Mark Daly on a successful year. We are happy to have you with us and leading the organization and look forward to another great year. That
Thank you
brings
all.
that brings, sorry to rush through. It took a little bit of extra time, so I want to.
No worries.
So that brings us to item number 8, which is organizational changes and new position classifications. And I'm going to hand it off to Executive Director Daly for that agenda item.
Thank you. And thank you all for bearing with us on the breakout rooms. The good news is we're coming back to in-person next month. So maybe we won't have to deal too much with breakout rooms in the future. So wanted to talk today about some changes coming up in the organization. Normally wouldn't talk a lot about staffing issues in an open public meeting, yet these are different. These are two people that are, and if you haven't read the staff report yet, that's what I'm going over, and you're going to find more information in there, including the slide I will present. But Vina Tabbitt, our deputy director, will be leaving the organization in September, and Karen Parkhurst, our planning and policy director, will be leaving the organization in early 2023. These are big hits, and that's why I wanted to make sure to have a discussion with council and make sure that people understood what's happening and how we're addressing this and moving forward. Both of them, thank you so much for giving to both Karen and Vina, giving us a lot of time to plan for this. So we've been working on succession for quite some time now. I met with each staff person to talk about what kinds of things concern them about this transition, what kinds of opportunities do they see for our organization. And I talked with staff earlier this month about the succession plan and have received positive feedback on it. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the organizational structure, and to accommodate that, I am looking for council action on 2 new positions. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So this is our current organization chart, and we've got Vina Tabbitt as our deputy director, Dave Reed is our IT manager, and Karen Parkhurst is our planning and policy director that report directly to me. I feel very fortunate over this first 5 years that I've had excellent people to lean on so that I could really learn my job, learn this organization, and feel like I've really got my feet under me before we had to deal with this kind of an important transition in our organization. And so with this, we've got 3 direct reports. it really relies heavily on both Karen and Vina have over 20 years experience in this organization. Their institutional knowledge is phenomenal and incredibly valuable. And so the current structure has really relied on their expertise for it to work well, and it does work well. And yet, when we look at with the both of them moving on, how best to organize for the future. And what I heard from staff, what I was looking at is kind of compressing our management structure, flattening the organization a little bit, because as we lose two people with the kind of experience they have, information flow is going to be incredibly important. And if we kind of squish the structure a little bit, we can broaden how our management team works. Our current management team is myself, Karen, and Vina, and under the new structure, it will include the GIS and modeling manager, which is Scott Carty, IT manager Dave Reed. Closer to when Karen leaves, we will hire a planning manager, and I'll bring that position classification to a council later in 2022. We'll be promoting from within for a finance and HR manager. Admin staff will report directly to me now, and also the transportation manager is one of the positions we're talking about today. So to facilitate this, and I'm actually going to stop sharing. Well, actually, I'll leave that up. To facilitate this, we conducted a salary survey and looked at all of our position classifications. And in so doing, in looking at the management structure and looking to compress, we are taking Vina's current deputy director position and kind of breaking it into at least two different pieces, where we've got the finance and HR manager. And then Vina wasn't serving as the transportation manager, but one of the things that I recognized and that staff recognized is our transportation program is incredibly important to our work. And we've got the responsibilities for that kind of diffuse around the organization. And it would be helpful to really have those responsibilities under a person, to make sure that we're getting everything done that we need to get done, that we're accounting for all our transportation responsibilities. And so under this new structure, the action I'm asking for today is to approve the classification of finance and HR manager and transportation manager. The finance and HR manager will be at range 29, which is our salary range, which is the same as our GIS and modeling manager and our IT manager. So there will be parity there. And same with the transportation manager. They will be at range 29, so we have parity across our managers. Finance and HR will have obviously finance, contracts, human resources, really be our administrative hub, which is a good portion of what Vina is doing currently. Our transportation manager will be looking from within and external, and we'll be hiring that over the next couple of months as well. That person will have responsibility, not necessarily doing all the work, but responsibility for making sure that we get our regional transportation plan done, that we're keeping our regional transportation improvement program updated. I could keep going on with the acronyms, but I think you all know there are a lot. And that's why we really want to have that centralized under a person that can look broadly at all those responsibilities. We've talked, and I'll mention this briefly, we've talked about the possibility that we become a transportation management area when the 2020 census numbers are finalized. And what that means is currently, as folks know, we're a metropolitan planning organization, and there's a special designation of transportation management area, TMA, for metropolitan planning organizations whose urbanized area has a population of 200,000 or more. And we are quickly approaching that number, if not already achieved it, through the Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater urbanized area. The census is still working on, they've just finalized the rules for those boundaries, But until they come out with the map, we won't know for certain whether or not we become a transportation management area. With that comes a few more responsibilities and a little more oversight from Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. So that is another piece of the reasoning, is making sure that we've got someone that's very much responsible for our transportation program. So we'll obviously, we've still got a lot of time before some of these things happen, but it was impossible for me to do my evaluation without talking about these important departures over the coming year. And so that's also why I wanted to, and we want to start moving into this succession, which is why I'm bringing those positions to council this morning. And I'll take any questions. Chris, and then Councilmember or Mayor Sullivan, sorry.
All I want to ask, I guess, is I see you got transitions going on, and I did read the staff report, so I saw that. And you're losing some of the most senior people who have served for a while on and our deputy director. I was just wondering, are you eventually going to recreate a deputy director when you have time? Because I think it's important to have succession around.
At this point, the intent is not to refill the deputy director position, and this has been something that we've thought a lot about. And one of the things that staff have pointed out is, well, this is a lot more for me, for you, executive director, and that's true. And I've had 5 years to really get my feet underneath me, and I feel like I'm ready for more. And so the deputy director position won't be filled as it currently is.
So I understand the logic behind that, but I also think you need to, in the long run, not right away, when you got staff you know can handle that, you need to think about succession planning. And it could be like you coming in from the outside, but you know, it needs to be thought about.
Thank you. Mayor Sullivan, and then Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you. So this looks very similar to what the city of Tumwater did a couple of years ago. And when we had the public works director who had been there forever and ever, he retired and left. And then we divided it into transportation and engineering, and then also water resources sustainability. And I would say that has created so much more efficiency, and it has created better structure within those departments. And so I look at this as being similar to that. And it's been very, very successful for the city of Tumwater. And sometimes breaking those up doesn't pull the resources that need to be covered, and it can focus on what each one of those, instead of trying to manage across the board. And I have just found that our efficiency since doing this has increased immensely. So I would think that this would be also beneficial. And also with the succession, you always have the ability to mentor someone, even though they're not, quote, that assistant director or deputy director, but you can pull someone into, because when you're on vacation, you're going to have people covering for you and be assigned to do those. So that's going to give everyone those leadership opportunities. And just because somebody doesn't have that title doesn't mean they can't have that responsibility for when needed. So I like this, and if this goes the way the city does, it's definitely a positive thing.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Mayor. Commissioner Edwards.
Mark, I think everything you've said is correct. And what's been pointed out, I think, is correct. My issue is doing it all at one time. And I think we need to recognize Vina and Karen's contribution for sure. And I almost think we need to have those positions replaced and on board not have everything happen where everybody is new all at one time. Now that's just my view, not knocking the change that is eventually going to need to take place, but I'm just wondering about doing it all at once. And I always come at this from kind of the taxpayer's perspective, and I'm not always enthused about building bureaucracies too fast. I'm not saying they aren't needed, for sure, because we do need to have that planning. But boy, if we did all of this, what would you end up with? About 5 new people pretty quick, wouldn't you?
Actually, I'm
time
going
it's all done.
to share my screen again briefly, because I want to be clear that, and this is also what I said to staff when I talked about this. I am completely confident that we have the talent within this organization to fill any and all of these roles, and move this organization forward. And so it's not so much trying to do it all at once as it is, we've got 2 people that we're going to need to account for, one leaving in September of this year and the other early 2023. And so the finance and HR manager is what we look to do first. And if that position is approved today, we'll actually be looking to fill that immediately, so that we have a lot of overlap with Deputy Director Tabbitt. And then we'll be looking to also fill the transportation manager. We won't be looking to fill for Karen's departure until much closer to when she leaves. And I also want to say, so really with what we're talking about here, it's at most 2 new people that would be either filling these positions, or if some of our existing folks take on these opportunities, then we're able to fill behind them. But still, we're only looking at replacing Vina and Karen as in terms of human resource. So 2 new people to the organization.
When you say 2 new people, yes, 2 new people, but is that 2 FTEs that are brand new, or aren't you going to have a 3rd one then when Karen goes as well?
No, that's why what you see here is we're going to fill the finance and HR manager internally. So no new person there. We're going to fill the transportation manager position. We're going to advertise that internally and externally. So that might be a person from within or a person outside the organization. And then if it's from a person from within, we'll fill behind them. Then later in 2022 for the planning manager, that too will be open to people internally and externally. So that could be a new person, or again, a person from within, and then we'd fill behind them.
Yeah, kind of a backfill process.
Correct.
And then, so say by the end of 2022, well, let's say by the end of 2023 or midterm 2023, how many new FTEs above and beyond what you have today would you anticipate?
None.
No new FTEs?
Correct.
No additional FTEs.
At this point, we are not considering additional FTEs. That's correct.
So where are you going to backfill from? I'm just, if you're going to do internal promotions.
Well, because two people are leaving. 2 people are leaving. 2 people would be coming in.
Yep, I realize that. Vina and Karen are both leaving. Those would be theoretically replacements, what you'd want to do eventually.
Correct.
But I thought you're trying to do one more, and then there's going to be others that'll backfill. But maybe I've got that mixed up, I guess.
No, it's just a matter of whether internal or external people get the finance and the transportation manager position or the planning manager position. But still, that's 2 people leaving, and then and then 2 new people hired to either backfill or to take one of those positions. the planning manager or transportation manager. So this is a net neutral in terms of FTEs.
And who's going to continue to do what those folks that do get moved were doing? I guess, are they going to continue to do their job plus be a direct report to you?
And that's where we start. I mean, that will depend 100% on who those people are, what their current workload is, what the end dates of some of that workload is. That we'll need to figure out when we start talking about specific people moving into those positions and what their current workload is. But yes, with any succession, there's kind of a bit of a domino effect, right? And we'll have to make sure that we're distributing the workload that they currently have. But let's just say, for example, an internal person becomes the transportation manager, then we'll look at that person's workload and see, are there things that they have now that they could continue to do as that, or when we backfill their current position, are we going to transfer those responsibilities to that new position? So those are some of the specifics that when we start talking about actual individuals, we'll need to work through.
Okay, thank you.
Rick Kelly.
So I appreciate the deliberate approach from both yourself and the staff, and the presentation of the staff material. I think it's important for leaders to manage periods of transition, as this is one of those areas which, squarely falls within the leader's wheelhouse. My only concern, and really it's just a comment, Mark, is that one of your goals or ambitions for the coming year or years is to increase community outreach and engagement. And at the same time, you are increasing your individual span of control, and increasing your management team. So I trust you and your staff going forward, and I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. But I do want to acknowledge what you said. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a challenge for me personally. But that's my job and I'm ready for it.
Thank you, Mark. I think you're looking for action from us.
I am on
And
the, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm looking at the time and channeling JW. So I believe the action you are asking is a motion to approve 2 new positions, the admin and HR position and the transportation director position. Is that correct?
Finance and HR manager and transportation manager.
Finance
Correct.
and HR manager. So I would entertain a motion to approve
Entertained.
the executive director's creation of the 2 new positions. Do I need to read that into the record, Berlina?
No, what you've said is sufficient.
Okay. So that I heard the motion from John. Is there a second?
This is Debbie, second. Oh, sorry, Joe.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hillary,
I'm sorry,
I think I'm going to vote against this because I just don't have a complete, good, broad understanding. And that might be my fault, but the democratic process will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I'm sorry to move so quickly past your opportunity for dissent.
And Chair, I'll follow up with Commissioner Edwards because I don't want you to have questions about this. So I'll follow up, Commissioner. Thank you.
Great. And maybe we can look to put something on the agenda with a little bit more detail about the overall organizational structure down the road. So any abstentions? I guess I should ask for that too, since we did have a dissent. Okay, great. The motion carries, and thank you for the presentation, Mark, and we'll look forward to hear more about how the organizational structure is changing. That brings us to agenda item number 9, which is the state fiscal year 2023 Unified Planning Work Program. And this presentation is being brought to us by Vina. We're going to go ahead and let Vina do her full presentation, and then we'll move for a short opportunity for questions. So Vina, take it away.
You. So I will try to go through this a little bit more briefly to catch up a little bit on our agenda. But I'm here to talk to you about what is essentially our transportation work program. The transportation work program is set to the state fiscal year. So while we bring the agency work program to you in the fall, we bring the transportation work program to you in the spring. And the official name for this is the Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP. Because if you don't know this by now, anyone to do with transportation loves acronyms and ways of describing things. This is a chance to ask me questions and provide feedback. It has already been reviewed by the Transportation Policy Board as well as our state and federal partners. We did that earlier this week. And then we will be asking for you to take action on it, probably on the consent calendar next month. Okay, so what are we trying to do with our transportation work program? And as an organization, why do we have this? And why do we have these sorts of organizations across the country? It's to make sure we're keeping our life cycle for transportation as low as possible, that we're making efficient use of our existing infrastructure and services. In our region, we really like to focus on aligning our transportation and land use decisions. We really try to work across divisions. We want to increase our viable travel choices, minimize environmental impacts, and of course, make our system. Those are the values of what we're trying to achieve. You all received my staff report, and in it is the work program. There's also some other things in that document. I'm going to be talking about the work program specifically, as well as our unfunded needs, but there's also a couple pages on other planning studies that are going on in the region that I won't be talking about. You all see those as they come to you throughout the year, and then planning activities of other agencies, specifically Intercity Transit and the Washington State Department of Transportation, both their headquarters and in the region, if you want to get a preview of what, or a little snippet of what's going on with them. So we at TRPC, we have two designations for transportation. One is that we are something called a Metropolitan Planning Organization. An acronym for that is the MPO. You'll hear that often as we're talking to you throughout the year. And then we also have something called a Regional Transportation Planning Organization, an RTPO designation, and that comes from state. Thankfully, the majority of the requirements are the same. And then there's a few, and that's this sort of green box in here. And things like doing the regional transportation plan or this work program, that sort of thing, and an annual report. There are a few things that only the federal government requires from us, and performance management. I'll be bringing some performance measures to you next month is one of them. And there's a few things that are really required by the state. Karen will be talking to you actually about the Human Services Coordinated Plan later on in the agenda. But for the most part, a lot of it is combined. We try to manage it as combined, and we combine the funds that we get from the state and federal government together to do a cohesive program for efficiency. So our work program this year, it's set up into 6 categories. It's a little bit of a departure from the years past because we've been able to combine a different set of federal money into it and make it a little more cohesive. It's actually a little more understandable, I think, this year. The first part is program management. Those are the things that we have to do to keep the program running, including staff development. When we have a lot of my time goes there, and when we have our transportation manager to replace those functions that I'm doing, their time will go there. Our project programming and tracking. The major components under that are when we do our call for federal projects and we're looking for projects to fund. We've been doing an update of that process. That's where the funding comes for there. Not the funding to program out, but the staff time of funding, as well as when TRESA brings the Regional Transportation Improvement Plan to you annually, and that'll be coming this summer. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with your staff. That's in that area. Ongoing planning and research is probably, or outreach is what you probably see the most. Those are our ongoing planning projects, like the Regional Trails Plan. When we start the electric vehicle plan, I'll talk a little bit about some of these ongoing efforts, as well as that transportation priorities survey that we talked about last year. That sort of thing gets funded out of there. Under data collection, analysis, and forecasting, we have a very robust modeling effort ongoing here at TRPC, which has served us so well with all the I-5 work that we've been doing, as well as all the projects that the local partners put forward. We get many data requests from our local partners for some model data for grant applications or ongoing development, just to do traffic impact analyses, that sort of thing, as well as the forecasting, our population employment forecasting. We have specifically called out some major initiatives. That's category 5, and I will go through those in detail. And then for the first time this year, we're specifying what funds we want to carry over to the next fiscal year, because it's always good to, it's like a little bit of our bank account, just in case something, for instance, the federal government shuts down and we need to keep paying our staff to keep going. So we have that, as well as contingency for things that we may not anticipate that may come up. If, for instance, if you ask us to undertake something, so we have a little bit set aside for that. It doesn't go away, it just carries forward each year. Some of our money can carry forward, some can't, and it also depends on the state biennium or not, but we've got a handle on that. So under ongoing planning items, I talked a little bit about the Human Services Transportation Plan, and Karen is going to talk about that more on this agenda item, so I'm not going to go into detail, but we have a little bit of extra support there. We have some funding from the state, but we really want to do extra outreach to underrepresented community members. So another thing that we have that's just about to launch is our household travel survey, and it'll be conducted this month. It's April now and May. And so we do have a state or federal grant that funds the consultant portion of that, but all our staff time of reviewing and coordinating and all of that comes out of our work program. We talked a little bit about I-5. Well, I-5 has been a really large focus for us for many years, and we were very successful with the state budget to get some more funding, and we have been in the past few years. But we also set aside some of our work program to focus on our I-5 centered activities, coordinating with the state. And then another thing that we have this year that we do every 10 years is a review of something called our urbanized area boundaries. Mark mentioned just in the reorg talking about something called a transportation management area, a TMA. Well, the census has come out with, every 10 years, the census comes out with new census urbanized areas. This year they have new criteria, but when they come out with them, we as a metropolitan planning organization need to review them and make sure they make sense, that they're contiguous, so there's no really strange things. And then there's a review in there, and it's and we work with our partners to make sure we get that right, because it's a once in 10-year opportunity. Okay. Then under major initiatives, some of the things that we're looking forward to next year or continuing to work on from this year. So one is a plan to prepare for electric and alternative fuel vehicles. We are hoping to start that up this year. Once we have a few other things finished up and staff ready to work on that, we know that's a high priority to you all. We have started the update of our population and employment forecast. That's where we look out to, right now it's our future year is 2035, and we'll be extending that to 2040. That's a 5-year cycle, so it's just one of those things that's ongoing. And it is funded both out of our transportation work program, because we need that forecast for our modeling and for our regional transportation plan, as well as for information services, because it's highly used for comprehensive plans and things like that. So it's one of our more highly used data products. I talked a little bit about household travel survey. And we also have some other data coming in, like updated traffic counts and some new data from cell phones. All of that is leading to an update of our regional travel demand model. We update that comprehensively every 10 years. So we update our regional transportation plan on a 4 to 5 year cycle. It'll be now 5 years. And the regional transportation model gets a big overhaul every 10 years, mainly after we do that household travel survey and see how the traffic patterns are. And of course, we have experienced a lot of changes in the last few years, so it'll be a big update there. We are aiming to complete the regional trails plan by the end of this year. That's been going on for a while. And then you're getting the hint that everything is cyclical here, The regional transportation plan, which we just adopted in 2020, will start its update this year. It'll be a soft start and then get going. And then I'm going to jump right into unfunded needs. And Mark and Katrina are going to talk to you a little bit about the high capacity project and the next steps. We did receive another $250,000 in the state budget as a proviso, but there might be next steps after that. So we keep it in our UPWP in case something comes out of there. So it's a little less defined about what would come after that. One that's been a huge priority for the council is a freight goods and services mobility strategy, something around freight. We put in a grant, a RAISE grant, that's a federal grant, highly competitive, for $500,000 last year. We didn't receive it. We had a debrief earlier this week and they said we were highly competitive. We just didn't, we made it to the secretary, the U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary's desk. So we were in the highly recommended category. But when they did the allocations per state and rural, urban, and all those splits, we didn't make it to the top list. But they encouraged us to put in again. They raised the minimum to $1 million. So we're re-putting in at that. But the project could be scoped in both ways, depending on how deep a dive we do into cost estimates and planning level details. Another project that we have as unfunded is looking at regional multimodal level of service. Olympia's gone to a multimodal level of service, and the state is looking at that. And that's something that we've been talking about exploring for a while. And so we would like to move forward with that in coming years if we could get funding. Another one is a transportation recovery strategy with all the flooding and things like that. That's a strategy to look at our vulnerabilities and what can we do to be proactive so that we don't have shutdowns during periods of flooding. Another one is our countywide bicycle and micromobility strategy. That is a dive into what is a regional bicycle network. So it'll be very complementary to our trails network, but also look at bike facilities that are not on the trails network and how do the micromobility vehicles or micromobility, I guess, vehicles fit into that, electric vehicles and scooters and things like that. And finally, is a neighborhood center study. When we talked about our call for projects update, we talked about how we really link our land use vision with our transportation investments. We've been making great headway on our corridor studies and our downtown studies, our center studies, but neighborhood centers really are proving to be a challenge in this region to get to be viable. And so it will be to put some resources into what can we do to change that. I am very, very briefly going to talk about what the new transportation management area, because Mark talked about that. But we should know in the summer or will possibly fall. Like every time I look at the deadline, they shift it out a quarter. If there will be a new TMA, what that means for us is more coordinated planning with state and transit agencies. We already do that. We do that very well, so I don't see any changes there. Something called a congestion management system plan, which is just how do we manage congestion in our region. We have been thinking about that between our corridor studies and our I-5 work. So I think that would be quite quick to do. MPO certification is something very comprehensive, and the state and federal partners, our state partners have just given us a lot of information on that for us to dive into. And then there'll be changes to funding and funding distributions, but there's also a lot of changes going on with the new infrastructure package from the federal government. So we'll be looking at all of that comprehensively. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. And if there's any questions, and the chair feels like we have time for them, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, I think we have a few minutes, so I will see if there's anyone who has questions. Please use the raise hand button, and I will manage the queue with an equity lens. So if you've already talked, I might skip you. Just going forward, I forgot to mention those new protocols. Chris.
Just a general question for Vina regionally. I don't know in Congress if there's anybody sitting on transportation committees. I do know that Patty Murray is going to be ranking member of appropriations. We got the other senator, head of commerce. When is our transportation system overall, like Seattle's problems and other places, going to start looking like Las Vegas and Salt Lake City, which don't have congestion problems? And they've done adequate investment in transportation to not have bottlenecks that we see throughout the state as it continues to grow. So I'm kind of concerned about it. I don't see even Highway 18 being, turned into an interstate, should be. Things like that affect our transportation too, because even though they're not in our county, they provide access to it. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure I have an answer for that, Chris, but that's well outside of the UPWP right now. So
Thanks, Mina. Robin.
We had an excellent presentation at our last Lacey City Council work session about a lot of work being done in partnership with jurisdictions and community organizations related to the need to do some work on I-5. And I'm just wondering, I know that's already on our list, right? And it's a high priority, but it's also scandalously expensive. So are there things that Lacey or the other jurisdictions can do to support TRPC as you're going to be representing us, making sure that that lands at the federal level high on the priority list for the next couple of years?
yeah, I'll let Mark do that one.
Yeah, so one of the, I think you're referring to, Bill Adamson from South Sound Military and Communities Partnership presented. And we've been working really closely with SSMCP. I'm working to get in front of all of our councils in the region as quickly as I possibly can to make sure that we can have that discussion as well, because this is a huge project, a huge opportunity, and yes, we're talking about an investment that in the billions, and therefore we need to all make sure we quote unquote get it right. And so that I'll be coming to have those discussions with Lacey's council and others very shortly, because
Sounds
this
great.
work, yeah.
Come on down.
Thank you, Robin and Mark. Are there any other questions for Vina? Thank you for a swift and detailed presentation, Vina. It is much appreciated. And I loved seeing all of that sort of like quality of life conversation happening in that presentation, which aligns so well with our conversation about mission, vision, and values over the summer. So yay. That takes us to the time in our meeting when we would normally have a break. And I do think it's important for us to continue with that important tradition that JW established. So I would love for us to take a 5-minute break. Please take a minute to stretch, get some water or coffee. We will come back at 9:58. All right, do we have everybody back? Most everybody? Great. Thanks, Robin. Thanks for the thumbs up. All right. We are back and we're going to move on to agenda item number 11, the Human Services Transportation Plan update, and here to their mobility management update from Karen. Hi, Karen. Welcome.
Hi, and I think that Dorinda is setting up the screen sharing. Thank you. I am excited today to bring us information about the Human Services Transportation Plan. This is a plan that really talks about connections. It talks about how people, especially those with age, who have age, income, ability, might have some special challenges in the transportation system. And so this plan really requires us to look at all the communities and say, what services are available? What do we need? What are the gaps? So Only Connect is really what these systems are about. Next slide. So everyone counts in the Human Services Transportation Plan. This is an opportunity, a really great equity opportunity to move out into our community and see who has what they need and how we can help them find solutions. Next slide. So again, as I said, this really looks at the transportation challenges and barriers. It also looks at what do we have and do people have the information? This plan is updated every 4 years, and in order to be eligible for certain grants, the projects need to be included in the plan. Sorry, I seem to have word salad in my mouth today. And so we're doing lots of outreach. This plan is due in fall 2022. Next slide. And one of the things that's included in this plan is the prioritized project list. You will be taking action on that later this year. But in order to be considered for projects, you need to be on the prioritized project list. And projects such as rural transit, Thurston County Bus Buddies, replacement dial lift vehicles, the alt fuel vehicles that are provider received for rural transit, you need to be on this list. And so this is an exciting time to be able to continue to do this effort. So next slide. What I'm really asking, here's my ask number 1 for today. This is kind of a briefing, and then there'll be an ask. And we are using the lists that we generated, the data that we have collected through the Transportation Priorities Survey. Thank goodness for that data, because we asked some questions with some demographics tied to them. And so we're going to be reaching out to the community, and that might be through the food bank, that might be through Morningside, lots of different organizations and people within those organizations. We really want to talk to people one-on-one and in groups now that that might be possible, and say what's working for you. What we know from the work that we do continuously in these communities is that people need more transportation options. In the rural transit program, for example, people would love to see that operate later in the evening. We currently are about 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They would love to have it work on weekends. Those are things we haven't been able to add to those programs. The other thing that this process allows us to do and requires us to do is to say, are we well aligned with schedules with intercity transit, with Twin Transit in Lewis County? How are our connections working for people? So we'll be doing lots of outreach. So our ask is, think about your community, and you don't have to remember this right now. I'm going to follow up with an email and say, are there groups that I might not think about that I should be contacting within your community. You know, we work with the Lacey Veterans Hub, for example, to work with our veteran community. But are there some other groups that I may not be aware of? We work with Thurston Thrives, which the county and the chamber sponsors. So I'm really asking you who in your community you think we should talk to. So that's sort of ask number one on this plan. And this plan, we learn so much. We learn so much about the things that we have available to us. And I get teary about this point. I do not want to have services available, but have the people who need them not know about them. And that's always something that we find out when we do the Human Services Transportation Plan and reach out to people, is they don't know what's already available to them. And we need to fix that. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Thank you. The second part of this is something that we have that's funded through one of the programs that requires us to be in this plan, and that's our Here to There website. There's the link to it. We created this probably, maybe 10 years ago through another grant. And the idea was, is there a one-stop place for people in our community or people traveling through our community can say, I need to go from here to there. Is there an option for me? And so this website was created to be the All Things to All People website that would help people know about transportation in the area. And so my ask for you is to visit this website. Again, I will follow up with the link in an email to everyone, but go there and see. We have school route maps in there. We have connections to transit systems so that you can, get a hold of Pierce Transit and see how to connect to their system. We have some portals. So if you're a veteran, you might want to go in through this portal. If you're, looking for school information or looking for connections to airplanes and getting out of SeaTac. So I really want you to visit this. We know that we're going to be making some technical corrections in the sense of taking advantage of Google Maps and the like. And so we're going to be doing those things. But this is really about, does the system work for you? Give it to your kid. Give it to your grandma. Have somebody look at it and say, hey, this helps me figure this out. And so that's the second ask. Next slide. And so that's it for today. This is a great plan. It really focuses us on equity and transportation in the region. This is required for both federal and state grant opportunities. And we really need your help. So please, when I send you that email, get back to me on places in your community that you think I should be working with. And we should I'm going to call out Michael Cade today. We are finishing a recruitment for business and community representatives in the Transportation Policy Board. And Michael Cade has stepped up, grabbed business people, wrestled them to the ground, and nicely asked them to apply for these positions. And so Michael, you are who we're following on this. So tell me what I need to know in your community, or if you are involved, if you want me to speak to your Rotary Club or, anything else where I go and talk to people. Renee Radcliffe Sinclair, who is one of our business members on the Transportation Policy Board, came up to me after a presentation to Kiwanis to say, hey, I'd like to do that. So the way people connect to this is really important. So I need your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Great presentation. And I see Debbie has a question.
Actually, I have more of a request. Can you just make it available so on your social media so we can share it through our social media? I think sometimes that is another good way of getting it out there. So if we can share it on our social media, that would be great.
That sounds terrific. We will do that. And I think we're also looking for an opportunity to come to your Citizens Advisory Group and give a plug for this as well and ask them some questions. So Intercity Transit's always been a great partner on this project.
Thank you, Debbie and Karen. Are there any other questions or comments, requests from members? All right, well, thank you, Karen. We'll look for those emails. Very exciting. That brings us to our next agenda item, which is the high capacity transportation study update from Mark and Katrina. And I know there might be quite a few questions about this, so I'm going to ask members to just keep the questions to the end, and then we'll make sure to set aside plenty of time for questions.
Great, thank you, Chair. So I'll start us off. Just as a reminder to Council, high capacity transportation, so looking at what people kind of used to refer to as mass transit, had been listed as an unfunded need in our transportation work program for some years. And through our last call for projects, Council allocated $200,000 of surface transportation block grant funds to get us started on looking at high capacity transportation options. And mainly we're talking about how can we better connect the Thurston region to areas to the north. We still have more people commuting outside of this region on a daily basis than people coming in. And earlier it was mentioned, what are we doing about long-term about congestion in our areas? We are looking at all of our tools in the toolbox to help address mobility. And one of the ways we can do that is through transit and through looking at these high capacity transportation options. If we can move more people via buses and other transportation options, those are fewer vehicles on the road, our freight moves better, the other vehicles move better. That's one of the tools in the toolbox. And so what Katrina is going to talk about is the work that we have done or that we are doing right now with the $200,000 that Council allocated in the last call for projects. But I'll also at the end of this talk a little bit about funding that we just received in the supplemental transportation budget just this last legislature 2022 for fiscal year 2023. They've provided $250,000 to look deeper into what our high capacity transportation options are for the Thurston region. That is funding that we don't yet have in hand, but we're really looking at, okay, what have we talked about doing with the $200,000 that that Council allocated, and now how do we amp this up with the $250,000 to really start to pin down and get far more educated on what are the costs of the different options, what are the implications of the different options in terms of some of our climate goals, in terms of reducing vehicle miles traveled, those types of things. But for this presentation, we're going to focus on the work that's going on right now, and I'll talk a little bit more at the end about the $250,000 that we just received and what we'll do going forward with those funds. So Katrina.
All right. One other thing I want to kind of add here is, as part of this work that we're doing right now, we are not talking about specific routes. We are not narrowing down to talk about types of modes. So whether it's train, bus, other ways to get around for high capacity transportation, that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is truly capacity building for TRPC, education for the region so that everyone kind of understands what are the goals and trade-offs of these of high capacity transportation options, and really helping us understand some of those federal hoops that eventually we're going to have to start jumping through. So the crux of this project is really broken into three parts. The scope is really about identifying issues. So talking about the roadmap, we have a consultant on board with to help us understand, what is the process for putting together a high capacity transportation project? What are the things that make sense for our region? What are the things that we need to look out for? What are the funding sources at the federal level that we may want to be looking at, et cetera? We're also going to be putting together a past studies memo. So looking at all the work that has been done in the past. So talking about ferries and commuter rail and other things that we have studied previously, so that all that information is in one place so that we have a full picture of what we've done before to base how we move forward. We're also looking at tool development, so specifically looking at travel estimates and forecasts. And this is work that our GIS and modeling team would be engaged in. And so it's really giving them the opportunity to figure out the tools that are out there and start building that capacity and ability to do those travel estimates and forecasts for high capacity transportation options. And then the third piece of this is really about a general feasibility analysis. So looking at understanding and communicating what's feasible for our community, as well as the costs and benefits and those timelines. So we'll be looking at narrowing down transportation issues for analysis. We'll be looking at ridership forecasts for each transportation issue, building off of the expertise of our modeling and GIS team, and then a financial analysis for each mode and transportation issue that we're analyzing. So this hopefully will give our region a better idea of what makes sense when with regard to high capacity transportation and the costs associated with that. So the roadmap, we are working with Fair and Peers on this, and they have been leading a series of discussions that are really broken into, at this point in time, 5 parts. We've done some reworking and refocusing as we've started our first couple of meetings to make sure that we're being responsive to the issues and questions that are being raised through our technical advisory committee. So the first one is really about defining the vision. And really the question is, what is the problem we're trying to solve with high capacity transportation? Because there can be more than one problem we're trying to solve. So we met with a technical advisory committee on February 17th to talk about this issue. We also met with a steering committee that was formed for this project, made up of TPD and council members on March 10th, and discussed it again. The second piece of this is partnerships and governance. We just had a meeting on March 17th with the TAC. And really this is about understanding the different ways high capacity projects are governed and how the type of project is better suited to different governance structures. So what makes sense for a commuter rail project may not make sense for a express bus project. So they also require differing levels of public input and involvement. And so we touched on that as well. At that March 17th meeting, we also invited the region's advanced planners so that we had those perspectives in the mix. And we'll continue to invite the right people as we move through this roadmap process. We're going to be talking about travel markets at the end of the month, or the second, April 21st, I believe. And so this is really all about what markets work for rail, express bus, and other types of high capacity transportation. We'll also discuss the impact of land use on those modes. Next up after that, we'll be talking about funding and timelines, and really on trying to understand what the timelines look like for getting express bus ramped up, and what rail service, what it would look like for rail service. Again, I just want to note that Interstate Transit already offers express service to Lakewood. So this is not necessarily, it's building on that, not duplicating that effort. And then finally, we're going to be looking at next steps. So how do we proceed from here, from what all we know for our region, what we learned from this process with the consultants. And it's likely to include some recommendations for ways to seamlessly, as much as possible, use that next step of funding that the legislature appropriated for TRPC. So the project vision, again, this was all about what problem are we trying to solve with this study. And so we talked about with the TAC and the steering committee, some different options of where we can focus our efforts. So what came from the TAC is that we should really be focusing on Thurston Pierce County connections. That was echoed with the steering committee to some extent, but there was also some desire with the steering committee to not lose sight of the connections within Thurston County. Staff's recommendation is really to focus on the north-south connections. And this is because Intercity Transit has an implementation strategy for establishing more frequent transit service within Thurston County. You see the BRT Light demonstration project, the one, they're moving into providing higher capacity transit already within Thurston County. And TRPC and IT will continue to support joint and individual efforts with, hopefully without duplicating those efforts. So if they've got the bull by the horns, as it were, in Thurston County, we want to support them in the work that they're doing there. The second piece that I think really wants us, make staff want to focus on Thurston Pierce County connections is that securing funding for inter-county high capacity transportation, so crossing that county boundary can be challenging. And so our experience as a regional organization and our efforts are really suited to helping bridge that service gap that can exist between when you're trying to cross those county boundaries. A third part of why we really want to focus on this is that when it comes to providing transportation service across county lines, there really isn't an entity technically responsible for that. TRPC can act as a facilitator and advocate for funding these types of high capacity transportation. So one thing that I've heard said on more than one occasion from folks at IT is that every dollar that they spend getting express service to Lakewood or to Pierce County is a dollar that's not spent within Thurston County on transportation needs here. And so if there's a way to rebalance that and give them more capacity or more funding, that would be a good thing. I'm going to pause. I think, Robin, you have a question?
I just wanted to ask
is it possible to hold questions to the end of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hold.
Thank you.
Okay. I also want to note that, we recognize IT's leadership and expertise in planning for higher capacity transit. They're the experts that we have in Thurston County right now. And so focusing on inter-county high capacity transportation does not preclude us from supporting what IT is already doing or knowing how it's evolving locally. So the concern, I think there was a little bit of concern from the steering committee that, if we are only focusing on the north-south connection, we're losing sight of what's happening in Thurston County. And I would push back on that idea a little bit, just because you can't escape it, and IT is going to be involved in this project one way or the other through the entire thing. And finally, the other big piece to this is that we've been involved in a lot of work on I-5 over the last few years. And we've got this $250,000 of funding coming from the legislature to talk about those north-south connections between Thurston and Pierce counties. So advocating for other things that we can do along with the work that we're talking about here is advocating for HOV lanes because that means express bus service works better and becomes more attractive if you can shorten those commute times. Other infrastructure that might be needed as the Nisqually bridges become more of a reality, or replacing those become more of a reality, can really work hand in hand with what we're starting right now. So at the beginning of the year, we formed up a steering committee, again, made up of TPB and council members. This is something that was called for in the original scope of the project. And as we moved through this and really kind of fleshed out the scope a little bit more and started reaching out to folks about the steering committee, you know, the question was raised more than once by both staff and by some policymakers is, can we accomplish what we need without a steering committee? And really what we need is that direction, those updates, and those check-ins. And so after giving it a lot of thought, I approached the steering committee with this question. I think we can dissolve this if you're amenable to it. We have TAC that's involved in this project throughout. We're meeting frequently with them and involving other staff members and regional partners on this project to ensure we're heading in the right direction. We scoped out as part of the project schedule 4 to 6, I can't remember the exact number, updates to TPB and TRPC. So if we built that in, we're going to have some redundancy between what the steering committee hears and what you all hear. And is that necessary? I think there were also some concerns from steering committee members about their workloads. So many of you work full time in addition to your elected roles, and that would be true for the steering committee members as well. So is another meeting the best or most respectful use of your time when we will already be bringing this back to you again as part of TPB and TRPC update or council updates? And then there's a question of timing. Is this the right time to involve a steering committee? I think, you know, we got what we needed from the visioning portion of that. I absolutely needed people to provide their feedback on that. But, you know, we're at the infancy as an organization of understanding the ins and outs of high capacity transportation projects. And so what we're trying to accomplish with this study is really a baseline. It's intended to set the region up for success, but we're not identifying specific routes or alignments. We're not determining what the right mode is for our region. We're not really performing public outreach at this point in time. All of these are things that would happen later down the road as we start to really understand and want to build those projects in the future. And so is this the right time if this is really truly setting the stage and capacity building? And then, yeah, I just want to also note that, you know, at the steering committee, we discussed the fact that just because we dissolve it now does not mean that we can't reform it in the future, even in this project, if it becomes necessary, especially since we are touching base with TPB and council frequently. So there will be opportunities to raise that if it's a concern that we need to continue to do that. So when we met with the steering committee, I would say that most members were in favor of dissolving it. To date, only one committee member has responded indicating they had concerns about dissolving the steering committee, and they were wanting to ensure that the TPB and council both had the chance to weigh in on how best to administer the project before a decision is made regarding the committee. I sent that email out in mid-March, and that's the only person that I have heard from that was a little wanting us to be a little bit more cautious before we dissolved it permanently. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to talk about this.
Yeah, so one of the things council members and transportation policy board members might be asking themselves is, where did this 250,000 come from, and why this work, why now, which Katrina has talked some about. And the Move Ahead Washington package, from a transportation perspective, worked pretty well for our region. I think folks have heard that we received 75 million for the I-5 Mounts Road to Tumwater project, and that is really to start designing how we would address the situation through the Nisqually River Delta and looking at some of the other segments along the corridor. We already have, from previous work, WashDOT already has $5 million to conduct the National Environmental Policy Act review. That's a really important milestone in a project like this. When that's done, we'll have a preferred alternative, and then that 75 million starts getting used to actually design the project. And so during session, Senator Leas, the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, reached out to us, and Karen Parkhurst and I met with Senator Leas, and what he wanted to talk about was they understood the priority of the I-5 work that we're doing and the need to address I-5 through the Nisqually River Delta. And the concern was, what are our long-term plans in relation to high capacity transportation? Do we have those kind of somewhat figured out? Because as they design any fixes to I-5, the desire was that those consider and incorporate what sort of high capacity transportation options we might be looking to facilitate in our region. And so, without a request, Senator Leas provided $250,000 to TRPC. And really what the point of this is to build off the work that Katrina just talked about and get us closer to looking at the options like improving express bus service that to the north that IT already provides, expanded van pool service to the north, the potential for commuter rail that uses the existing Amtrak facility, the potential for commuter rail that extends into the Tumwater, Olympia, Lacey area. And also the Move Ahead Washington package included $150 million to continue to develop the ultra high-speed rail proposal that is from Vancouver, BC to Portland. And so that too will pass through our region. And so that's why there's some urgency around this work, and because what we do to I-5 potentially has an impact on what those high capacity transportation options are. And so what the intent is with this 250,000 provided by the legislature is to do a deeper dive into those kinds of options that I just talked about. What's the potential cost of those? What would that mean to taxpayers in our region? What would that mean to taxpayers throughout the state? What are the potential environmental impacts of these different options, so that we can start to hone in on and what kind of timeline, what does it take to develop these kinds of options, so that we can, as a region, can better understand what's feasible today, what's feasible 5 years from now, what's feasible 20 years from now, and start to put some bounds on that so that we can then be working towards those high capacity transportation options, and again, incorporate any of that as necessary into the I-5 design work. So that is a little more information on why there's some urgency around this work. And Katrina, unless you don't have anything, unless you have something else, we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Mark and Katrina. That was great. I know there is often a lot of interest in this topic, so I would invite folks to use the raise hand feature, and I will try and move people through the queue. And if you've not spoken yet, I might move you to the front of the line, but if you have, we'll just move through a regular style queue. So I know Robin had a question early, so I'm going to go to her first, and then we'll do Gary and Debbie.
Sure, thank you. So I know that there's been a lot of attention paid to the needs, especially in that Mounts Road, like the intersection between Pierce County and Thurston County for TRPC and the jurisdictions. We've been thinking about that and the needs there for a long time. There's been partnership with military organizations and the tribes. And I'm curious about whether or not Pierce County is paying the same level of attention to the needs in that stretch. I wonder how solid our partnership is, because I think we have a better chance of getting what we need at the federal level if both of our counties are speaking with the same voice. So how does that look? How's that partnership?
Yeah, so Pierce County, the cities of DuPont, the cities of Lakewood, the city of Lakewood, and Joint Base Lewis McChord have all weighed in support of this work, because we've showed in the past some of the modeling of what things look like in 2045 if we do nothing. And there's at Mounts Road, we'd be expecting a 5+ mile backup. And so Pierce County and the—
How good are you at jumping?
And so they've been very dialed into this need. And in fact, I'm meeting with the city of Lakewood in a week or two to keep talking about this. I've talked with Josh Brown, the executive director of Puget Sound Regional Council, to make sure that we're coordinating with them as this work goes forward. So I think we've got a good partnership. And I'll also mention, though, that the Pierce County and the cities in Pierce County, their primary concern is that Mounts Road kind of to Marvin Road segment. And the one thing that I think is important to say to council is that there are issues throughout that corridor, and so through Tumwater. And so for our council, I think as we talk about this work, as we talk about this project, it will be important for us to continue to talk about the needs from Mounts Road through Tumwater, so that we're accounting for the function of the whole system, not just that area through the Nisqually River Delta.
Thanks, Mark. Gary, I see you put your hand down. Are you still wanting to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, I was just trying to get ahead of the game so I didn't miss the mute. I'm just wondering, as we move ahead with this review, if you will, are we taking into consideration all the new societal issues like work from home, for an example, and how much of an impact that is going to have on traffic, for sure? And then maybe some of the new technologies, like, I don't know, I'm not a fan of Zoom, but I guess this whole metaverse concept might be a new way of having meetings. And so are we taking all that into consideration and make sure we don't miss the boat on something, I guess?
It's a very good question, Commissioner Edwards, and yes, we are. We already have revised our traffic model to include some greater assumptions around telework, and we're going to continue to be tracking this to adjust as we see what the reality ends up looking like as we emerge from COVID response. And so, yes, we can build those assumptions into our traffic model, and we are considering those in this work.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I'm going to go to John for a
Thank you.
question or comment.
Yes, Mark, what actually has changed with Pierce County? Because there was a period, and remember, I've been here for a little while. There was a period where there was a promise from Pierce County that if we became part of them, that they would bring a train station down to the DuPont area. Notice there's still no train station down there. And I've never seen them where it was a partnership. It was to be part of them or just to stand alone. So And I have not seen that changed. Now, DuPont and Lakewood, they've always been in favor of this, but I don't think they have the ability to step outside of Pierce County to even try to make something happen between us and them. So you make it sound like it's a little bit different. And if it is, I'd like to know how it's different, because otherwise I don't see us really expending the funds to try to do something for them when they're not going to be doing anything for us.
So one thing on that, there's a couple of different pieces there. So I'll address the rail to DuPont first. Commuter rail is coming to DuPont as part of Sound Transit Phase 3. It had been scheduled to be to DuPont. I believe the year was 2036. They've now pushed that out to 2045. During the pandemic, they pushed that out. And so commuter rail will be coming to DuPont in 2045. I think what you're talking about is Pierce County was exploring at some point in time potentially becoming part of our metropolitan planning organization. Rather,
No,
that's not what you're referring to.
It was the other way around.
Oh,
They wanted
okay.
us to be part of them.
But there was some discussion about that. This was right when I was coming in. It would require statutory change. It would, because Pierce County is part of Puget Sound Regional Council by definition, and it's the 4-county area. And also, as I was coming on and having discussions with folks around here, there was a lot more concern about the risk of being the small fish in the Puget Sound Regional Council pond than being able to continue to speak for our interests and advocate for our interests. And so that discussion is done.
Yeah, okay, because I was one of those voices, and since then I have not seen Pierce County step up to do anything with Thurston County, but Thurston County is constantly trying to do something with Pierce County.
They have been supporting this work at least through South Sound Military and Communities Partnership, and have been a good partner in building the understanding of the needs around this work, the I-5 work in particular.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Debbie.
So kind of along that lines, because Intercity Transit provides all of the service to Pierce County, and Pierce County does not, Pierce Sound Transit does not provide any assistance, service, or help. So it falls strictly on Intercity Transit. So that's always been kind of a difficult situation. One of the things that wasn't mentioned, and I see it come up every once in a while in the legislature, somebody gets a great idea that maybe we should have ferry service down to Olympia. And so I am not sure if that, if somehow we can address that. So when that keeps popping up in the middle of a ledge session, I'm hoping that it, if it gains traction, we at least have a plan for it. So, because I don't foresee it, but then lots of surprising things happen that I don't anticipate coming to reality. And the other thing is that I'm glad you mentioned the timeline to get rail to DuPont, because people in Thurston County keep saying, well, we need to bring light rail, but the reality of the timeline for that is so long that we really need to make sure that people understand that time frame and not make it sound like it's going to happen in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. There just really needs to be reality around that. And, because I hear it all the time. Well, let's just bring light rail. That's not necessarily an option. And the cost would be so astronomical. Not that I'm against it. It's just that it needs to be put in a timeline, a reality of timeline and cost.
Absolutely. And that is definitely one of the outcomes that we want to see from this, is really managing all of our expectations about what's feasible and by when, because the kinds of it's very easy to say I'd love to take a train to Seattle. When we start talking about how much that costs to develop and how long that would take to develop, that needs to be part of this conversation, and that's what this work is will be doing. On ferry service, this is one that we have been talking about internally, so will be important to get continue to get Council and Transportation Policy Board feedback on this. Puget Sound Regional Council, you might remember, they finished it in January of 2021. They received funding from the state legislature to look at passenger ferry service throughout Puget Sound. And they did include looking at ferry service to Olympia. It fairly quickly dropped out of their evaluation, and the primary reason being one of their filters was they were comparing ferry service to if you were to make the same trip through in a vehicle. And ferry service, because of Dana Passage in particular, Dana Passage is quite narrow, and it's the opening into to Butt Inlet. And it is quite narrow, and they were using a 1,500-foot buffer on either side of the shoreline to account for environmental issues and erosion issues from passenger ferries. That 1,500-foot buffer could not be accommodated through Dana Passage. Therefore, they assumed low speeds, the kind of speeds that are required to make sure that you're not creating a wake that will erode. And with that, ferry service was considerably slower than the same trip to Tacoma and Seattle via a vehicle, and therefore it was eliminated from further evaluation in that Puget Sound Regional Council study. There has been I have certainly heard some discussion of people wanting another look at that. But as of right now, that's not part of the scope. But if that's something that we need to look at so that we can bring resolution to this issue, that's certainly something that we can consider. So thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, go ahead.
And so, because I kind of put that in the same category as light rail, it's something that people think of as a great idea, but the actual ability to do that is not necessarily there. So I think maybe making sure that that is addressed, just so that it answers questions moving forward, because those things just continually come up over and over and over again. So if there's just something people can point to that says no, that, and for exactly those reasons that you mentioned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks, Mark. Or one more question from Chris, and then we'll move on to our next agenda item. Thanks for waiting, Chris.
Thank you. On the hydrogen ferries, a lot of people don't know that there's a passenger ferry being manufactured inside our state up in Bellingham. And one of the reasons people would hop on a ferry is to avoid carbon, or just to visit Seattle for shopping or other purposes rather than commuting. So don't forget that. The manufacturer is called All American Marine. Look it up. They're doing it. They're just passenger, not car ferries. Okay, I just want to add to staff. John Weidenfeller has experience dealing with Pierce County because our second largest amount of systems is in Pierce County. We have a good relationship with Pierce County government, which doesn't have a PUD. And what I will state to you is he's also worked as a general manager to a city up there, Bonnie Lake. So he knows all the players. Utilize him. He's a very good point of contact for Pierce County. And, the bridge is the vital thing here. If you don't get transportation over the bridge, or if the fort never solves its terrorism problem about having a stop there, which is why it never got to DuPont in the first place, then, forget about this. Because you need to have that bridge be able to bring the light rail or whatever mass transit system across. If that doesn't get done, and we've got a wonderful time ahead of us. We have senior senators The stars are aligned. We've got infrastructure spending going on. This is the only time you got to strike when it's hot. And we also have a congresswoman that represents Pierce County and us, who's a former mayor of Tacoma. She gets transportation. Use her. She wants to be reelected.
We certainly are, and Congresswoman Strickland is well aware of our priorities, and we've also been talking with her office about how, and this is something that we'll be talking about more here, but the infrastructure funds are going to start being distributed fast and furiously. And that's going to be a challenge for all of us to stay on top of. And we're looking at how can we take advantage of the bipartisan infrastructure law to help us get some of these expensive priorities, help them along. We're going to need federal involvement.
Final thing, Andy Ryder has a very good connection to Patty Murray's office. She'll either be chair of appropriations or ranking member. User.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation, Katrina and Mark. I know this is an interest area for so many of us. Anyone who has to drive on I-5 or wants to go anywhere is always thinking about how to do it quickly and less stressfully and in a more sustainable way. So thank you very much for the good presentation and the good conversation. That brings us to report from outside committee assignments. And I think that's Helen on the Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Management Policy Board. Hi, Helen. Do you have something to share with us?
Well, the meeting is next week. So no, lucky for you, since we're behind on the agenda.
That's okay. It's always good to make time for a collaborative event. So we'll look forward to a robust conversation next month. Hi, Helen. Nice to see you. Okay, that brings us to the executive director's report. Mark, that's you.
So I'll keep this brief as well. The main thing that I wanted to touch on is I am setting up times to present to all of the city councils and the board of county commissioners. I'm starting there, and I've started with the South County. So I've got those briefings scheduled with Tenino, Yelm, Rainier, and Bucota, and then I'll be just continuing to make the rounds because there's a lot going on, and I want to make sure that we're helping you all tell the rest of your boards and councils about this work that's going on and have an opportunity for people to weigh in directly and ask questions. And so that will be going on all through the spring and summer, and if anything you can do to help facilitate getting me on the agenda, that'd be awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm sure we all look forward to welcoming you in the coming months. That brings us to our member check-in. And member check-in is a time for you to share something that's happening in your jurisdiction, but I would also invite you to use it as an opportunity to share a takeaway from today's meeting that you are excited to bring back to your jurisdiction. So I will look for hands, and I will start by saying I am super excited to bring back the Here to There survey. So thank you, Karen, for that presentation. I'm excited to bring that back to my jurisdiction and encourage young people and families who are attending our schools to be a part of that conversation. So I'm looking for hands for anyone else who would like to comment. Oh, okay. Let's go to Amy from the port.
I did not know that the timeline on ferries coming here was part of the holdup with the erosion. So that was interesting to learn. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Amy. Rick.
Lacey Fire District is reopening their fire stations and public engagement opportunities face-to-face. So excited to hear that, and that's effective today. Oh, and I appreciate Mark really connecting all of the north-south transit efforts in that kind of singular statement. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Rick. Is there anyone else who would like to do some member sharing from their jurisdiction or share what they're excited to bring back? Gary. Gary, you're muted.
Okay, how about now? Sorry about that.
That's great.
Actually, I thought maybe I would be able to add to what Mark commented on about the whole north to south connection. And after that train accident what we had a couple of years back, boy, I can tell you, Fort Lewis is a big player, Lewis McCord, on that whole concept. They realized what an important portion that bridge was to their whole effort of their mission, I guess is the best way I'll put it. And so I think for those of you that don't attend those South Sound with Bill Amundsen, they are really on board and pushing hard. That's it.
Thank you, Gary. Carolyn.
Hi, two quick things from Lot. In the succession planning department, the Lot board approved the deputy director, Matt Kennelly, to succeed Michael Strube when Mr. Strube retires somewhere between September and November in the fall. So, and they have quite a succession planning program going there. So pleased to report on that. And another thing I think that may be of interest to the partners here is there is an effort afoot to try to get a jobs training center established here. Lot is taking a lot of leadership on it because it is a profession that requires a lot of technical skills, but they're looking beyond the clean water thing. So I know they're eager to work with school districts and the community college here, so Hillary, but I think it's an exciting prospect here. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing, Carolyn. That is exciting. Eileen.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the presentation that we received. I am on the steering committee that is dissolved, but may be coming back. And so I appreciate that information as far as the flexibility of making that clear to people that we may come back. And also too, I really appreciate the timeline, because I was not, thank you, Mayor Sullivan, for asking, because I didn't realize that the timeline for bringing rail to DuPont, because it really does factor into, as she said, as far as, what we do between now and then, because there's a lot of interest in having light rail here as well. So people that I've spoken to wanted to be sure that was still, even though with the expense and everything, that it's still factored into this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. John.
On September 10th, mark it on your calendar. Some of you guys know how long Tenino's been around. We've been a city for well over 100 years, but we've been recognized as Tenino for 150 years because of the train station. So we're going to be celebrating and giving a big history lesson at the museum of the beginnings of Tenino and how important the trains have been for our area. It's September 10th. Don't forget. Did you mark it on your calendar yet?
I wrote it down.
There you go. Thank you much.
The beautiful city of Tenino.
Great city of Tenino. Thank you.
Great city. I mean, it's beautiful too.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Are there any other appreciations or things to share out for the good of the order from your jurisdictions? All right. Well, seeing none, I thank everyone for an excellent meeting and all the great engagement and questions. There was a lot of good conversation. Thank you to the staff for the excellent presentations. And I wish you all a wonderful, restful weekend. This meeting is adjourned.
Non-debatable motion.
Thank you.
Good night.